Good evening, friends. Thank you for being with us here tonight. I'd just like to take a minute to tell you a little bit more about the genocide prevention work that we are doing here at MCW, and just to say a little word about one of my biggest inspirations, Dr. Wiesel, who you will hear from shortly. So in addition to the many programs that you've heard about from Elie, since 2007, MCW has been doing its share of raising awareness about the crime of genocide and fighting racism, anti-Semitism, and intolerance of all types and kinds. Throughout the year, since 2007, we've been carrying out genocide prevention using a variety of vehicles. In addition to my speaking engagements in high schools, colleges, conferences, and other venues where I share my personal experience of surviving the 1994 genocide in Rwanda, as you heard, we also organize throughout the year a number of forums whose mission is to educate the public about the fact that the never again that was promised many, many years ago is yet to be fulfilled. And in addition to that, genocide awareness forums that we hold throughout the year, we also, as you heard from Elie, we strive to find ways to help genocide survivors, many of whom are still struggling to rebuild their lives. And it is because of that and in that spirit that we went to Rwanda in 2008 and recently completed the community center that you heard about earlier this evening, and which provides now educational and entrepreneurial activities and services to Rwandan youth, many of whom are genocide orphans. But I would like to say that Dr. Wiesel, who you will hear from shortly, as I said, has had a lot to do with my work. After surviving the 1994 genocide, I struggled for a long time to understand, and I often asked myself why it is that I had survived, why my siblings and my parents and most of my extended family had not survived. And it's a question that I still ask today, but I have to say that several years ago when I was in high school, when I was a sophomore in high school, I had the opportunity to read Night by Elie Wiesel, which I hope all of you have read. If you haven't, please make sure that you do. And after reading Night, I have to say that although, again, I still ask myself sometimes, why me? Why did I survive? After reading the Night, I realized that perhaps one of the reasons why I survived was to be able to tell the story and to speak for those who can no longer speak for themselves, and to tell the story of the over 1 million women, men, and children who were murdered in Rwanda in 1994 for no other reason than their ethnicity. Since then, and after reading Night, I was inspired by Dr. Wiesel to start sharing my story, and I've been doing that since 2001. And in many ways, Dr. Wiesel has a lot to do and ultimately inspired me to do the work that I'm doing now with Miracle Corners of the World. So, Dr. Wiesel, I would just really like to thank you for inspiring me and many other genocide survivors to tell our stories, and for helping us to begin finding some type of the answer to that question that often haunts many genocide survivors: why did I survive?
Good to be with you. As for Jacqueline, I'm terribly proud of you. She didn't tell you how it happened, really. At the United Nations, we had a conference, and I came to speak. And then Jacqueline spoke, and she said that because of Night, now she writes a book, her life. And afterwards, I promised her that her book would be published. We tried. Believe me, we tried, what she and I. Has it been published, actually? No. Not yet. I cannot tell you, I'm so disappointed in publishing. So I was ready to write a preface and help. The book is not published. What is the story? The story of Rwanda. We could have prevented it, my God. We knew it was coming. And we could have stopped it afterwards. And we didn't. I must tell you, I spoke to so many leaders of the world while Rwanda was still a project and the first murders occurred. I don't want to give you the names because you will be terribly disappointed too. In Europe, and not only in Europe, saying, you can stop it before it happens. And the United Nations has invited me to speak at the General Assembly, so I titled my address, Will the World Ever Learn? And the answer was terribly pessimistic. No. It will not because it hasn't. Had the world learned, there would have been no Rwanda, and no Cambodia, and no Bosnia. So what else can we do? Well, we have to believe in miracles. And I do believe in miracles. I'm a writer, I'm a teacher, and just as you speak to one person, well, I've been teaching for 40 years. I've never given the same course twice, because I love it. I love to be with my students. And why? Because in the corner there is always a beautiful girl, always, naturally. Or in the other corner, a young student. And at one point, during a discussion, there is a flicker in their eyes. And I know, they understood. It is for that flicker in that student that I work so hard to prepare my courses and to do whatever I can in my classroom. I think, Ali, you do the same thing when you write your articles or when you are on television. You think that there is somewhere one person, and if that person needs you and we don't respond, then we are to be judged. That's the whole thing. One person. I go around the world. Once I was in Spain, I remember, and I was terribly poor in my youth when I was a student at the Sorbonne. And I came to Spain to write about the subject there, Inquisition and so forth. And at one point in Barcelona, a man stopped me with his hand open and said to me that he is hungry. I looked at him and I said, so am I. I didn't have a penny in my pocket that day. And there was a smile on his face, which I will never forget. For a second, we became allies in the fight against hunger, which means the fight against humiliation. What can be worse than to face someone who has been shamed by destiny and by society? The shame should be on the society, not on the person who is hungry. So you deal with miracles, and I believe in them. Whenever I meet a person who understands, it's a miracle. It's a miracle on my part that I know to find the words, and a miracle on his or her part because they read those words. Books, I'll end with a joke, a marvelous story. Franz Kafka, as you know, who was the master of all of us. Franz Kafka was sick, suffered, I think he had lung cancer or something. And every year he would come to a spa, Marienbad or Karlsbad. And one year he came to that spa, checked in. The innkeeper says, Franz Kafka, the name rings familiar. Kafka said, no. Yes, No, no, no. And then Kafka goes up to his room. The innkeeper runs after him. Tell me, do you happen to be a writer? Kafka says, I don't think so. Why do you ask? He said, because my son thinks he read you. And he thinks that you are one of the greatest, most important writers that he had ever read. He wants to see you. And he said, why? Because you are Kafka. And Kafka says, tell him it's a case of mistaken identity. He said, no, he wants to see you. He said, look, my son is a nooch. See him for a moment, and he will let you sleep. And me too. Okay, he said. In came Mr. Kafka. This is the greatest day in my life. Why? Because, what do you mean? You are a great writer. What did you read from me? He said, the trial. You read a trial? He said, yes. Where did you get it? And he said, I bought it. And Kafka says, no, it was you? That's the miracle. Thank you.